It's like being awake in a dream, like watching a movie play out in my mind. Other lives, other versions of me, existing across the multiverse, transmitting a message, a broadcast. Do you remember? We're all eternal, stars wandering through infinity, on a quantum journey back to self. Are you ready?
You are listening to Wandering Star Podcast. This is a journey through time and space as we follow one human being's soul as it travels through many incarnations on planet Earth and back to Source again and again and again, learning and growing and evolving to uncover the power and potential within and what it means to be a human being. Join us as Hilary shares her first 13 quantum healing hypnosis sessions with us. Each episode will begin with a lifetime that has been revealed to her that she has written into a beautiful story. And then following the story, Hilary and I will dive in to unravel the mystery to discover Hilary's unique divine human potential and what her true purpose is and why she chose to come here during this incredible time of expansion on planet Earth. This is episode 1, Awake in a Dream.
Ocean of darkness, silent, eternal, not a sliver of light, not a whisper of sound, no end, no beginning. It's the kind of darkness that suffocates you, that holds you down, taunts you, plays tricks on your mind. Is this even real? Am I even alive? It's the kind of darkness that reveals you, exposes your vulnerabilities, rips apart your carefully curated facade. Will I give in to fear, let it carry me away? Or will I wait, patiently trusting that this is all happening for a reason? It's the kind of darkness that only when you surrender to the unknown will it release its grip on you. I ease into the solitude, breathe into the doubt, flow into the abyss. And then, out of nowhere, a wave of terror crashes over me, pulls me under, a crushing weight I can't escape. The intense fear consumes me, sheer panic and dread. For what, why, who, I do not know. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't know where I am. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know who I am. My mind starts spinning out. Delusions lurk all around me, trapped doors, waiting for me to open them up. The fear starts to triumph, and I remember I can breathe. Just breathe. Slowly, calmly. Just breathe. And there it is, a fragment of light above me, tiny but growing in size. Like the curtains being pulled back at a theater, the darkness fades, and a new picture is revealed. A glowing sun emerges, warm, soft, divine, illuminating the beauty that now surrounds me, waking the ambient life. Rocky peaks tower in the distance, speckled with a dusting of snow. The hushed whisper of aspen trees swaying in the gentle breeze. Colorful wildflowers paint the landscape. I hear the sound of water lapping upon the shore. I look around and realize I'm floating in water. So clear and pristine I can see the colorful rocks that lay far below me. An alpine lake. Yet the water is mild. The air is slightly crisp, but the sun radiates warmth, and I relax into the scenery. Gazing upward, floating in stillness, a fluffy cloud strolls by, and I wonder where it's going. Could I hop on and go along? This place is too beautiful to leave just yet. I'll just float here for now. My trance is broken by the sound of a splash. Is someone here with me? I quite preferred the solitude. I spin around, and there he is, rising gracefully out of the water, then diving back into the deep. A dolphin. He pops up next to me and smiles. I rub his head, and he whistles with delight. Well, this is unexpected, yet feels like the most natural thing, a dolphin in an alpine lake. His playful company is appreciated. I somehow feel as though I've met him before. He shows off for a bit, diving in and out of the water, flipping in circles, swimming around me with ease. Perhaps I'll do the same. And here we are, back flipping in crystal clear water, just two old friends, eeping and giggling at the wonder of this moment. I rest upon the shore, soaking in the spectacle. And suddenly, it hits me again. The terror. The raw, gripping fear takes over again, and I'm crying and shaking. I don't understand. Why is this happening? I'm in this magnificent, peaceful place. Why is this happening again? What am I so afraid of? Breathing deeply, I try to calm myself. The dolphin appears next to me. I look into his eyes, and the fear slowly fades away. I know. I'll just stay here with him where it's safe. Perhaps I shouldn't take this journey. Perhaps this is the journey, meeting him here in this beautiful place. I think I'll just stay here. I kiss his nose lightly and thank him for his protection. He turns to dive back into the deep, and I hop on his back and hold on as he takes me to the bottom. I touch the smooth painted rocks that cover the lake bed. Pinks, greens, purples, shimmering in the sunlight. We rise to the top, and I breathe in the clear mountain air. He takes me back to shore, and I get lost in the wild beauty that surrounds me. The cloud has moved on. The sky is an impossible blue. The mountains, so rugged and mighty, I consider what it would be like to stand on the top and look down upon this lake, surrounded by colorful wildflowers, lush aspen trees, a dolphin leaping in and out of crystal clear water. This place is pure magic. I look next to me at the dolphin. He nudges me. I pretend I don't notice. He nudges again. I understand what he's telling me, but I'm not ready. I just need to stay here where it's safe. I'm not ready to go. I rise up and dive back into the deep, but he intercepts me. Gliding beneath me, he swims me back to shore. Again, nudging. I can't go anywhere, I say. I don't even have a body yet. Where are my legs? My arms? Where's my reflection in the water? How can I leave if I have no legs? He's still, watching me with understanding. Intuitively, I know the journey must begin. Another nudge. Okay. I get it. He lets me know he'll wait for me. He'll be here when I return. It's okay to go now. I slowly rise up out of the water. Looking down, I see a hand. Smooth, pale skin. The hand of a young woman. A teenager, perhaps. Is this me? I look down and see a torn dress, faded black. It's old, unwashed, shredded along the bottom. I'm barefoot. My feet are bruised and worn. I feel my hair brushing my cheek and see it's a chestnut brown, down to my mid-back, uncombed, tangled. I turn away from the lake and a path emerges. Tall grass on either side. I can't decipher what lies ahead, but I follow the path into the unknown. My hand reaches out, stroking the blades as I tread lightly along the trail. The grass is swaying, sometimes lightly, sometimes fervently as a cool gust of wind blows through. Grasshoppers dance across the path, leaping with confidence, buzzing with life. The ground feels soft beneath my sore feet. Another gust of wind blows in, and with it, the salty smell of the sea. A seagull squawks above me. Further ahead, a lighthouse appears. It's white with a faded blue horizontal stripe across the middle of it. Perhaps I should go there. Maybe there's someone there I'm supposed to meet. I continue on. Before reaching the lighthouse, I stop along a cliff and look out at the sea. Waves crash upon the rocky shore. Seagulls circle above me. The sun is slowly setting, and I squint further down the coastline. I'm crouched low, hesitant. And then I see it. A large wooden ship docked a few hundred yards away. A black flag on the masthead, flapping in the ever-increasing wind. A pit in my stomach. Another wave of panic crashes over me. Pirates. Not just one ship, many ships. I hear yelling in the distance and flatten myself to the rocky cliff. I look next to me and suddenly a girl appears. She's quite young, maybe 4 or 5. Her long blonde hair is unkempt, knotted, wild. She's wearing a shabby gray dress, no shoes. Her tiny feet are scratched and bleeding. She's got piercing blue eyes, filled with quiet tears. She's looking to me for help. I'm not certain who she is, but I understand we need to leave here, quickly. I grab her small hand and help her up. Hunched over, we run away from the sea, away from the ships, away from the pirates. The path that led me here is now gone, and the terrain has become jagged, cutting our feet as we stumble across the rocks. We pause for a moment, and I see a light ahead of us. Unsure of who or what it is, I step ahead of the girl and slowly lead us closer. In the twilight, I can see it's a stone cottage. Small, quaint, a green mossy roof, a pale blue door with a dim light above it. We must go there for help. As we get closer, the rocks fade away and grass appears. It's shorter than the grass before, just above our ankles. We can run faster now. I grab the girl's hand and we sprint towards the cottage. No lights are on besides the one outside. I pound on the door, calling for help. No answer. We move around to the side and I knock on a window. Again, no response. Banging louder, screaming for help, our cries are met with silence. The girl is sobbing and I realize tears are streaming down my face too. Frantic now, hearing the shouting from the pirates in the distance, we run to the front door and I try opening it. It's unlocked. I carefully push the door open and quietly creep inside. There's no one home. I look around the space. It's just one room. A single bed pushed against the back wall, with an old thick wool blanket on it. A worn forest green armchair sits in the corner. A tobacco pipe rests on a small wooden table next to it. There's a stone fireplace with a pile of ashes and coals scattered about. A tiny kitchen with a black tea kettle and an oil lamp on the counter. A pair of old gray wool slippers near the door. An instant knowing. The man who works in the lighthouse lives here. Outside, the pirate shouts are getting closer. I see lights in the distance from what appears to be torches they're carrying. They sound drunk, belligerent. My heart is racing. There's nowhere to hide here, so we rush out of the cottage into the dark night and cower in some shrubs. Trembling, we wait. The panic in me rises again, and suddenly the cottage is engulfed in flames. In a flash, I see the oil lamp on the ground. The pirates' torches setting it all ablaze. The face of an old man appears right before me. It's the man who works in the lighthouse. I know him. I see his kind blue eyes, his soft white beard, a brown cap on his head, his affectionate smile. I know him. I see him laying on the floor in the cottage, unconscious. The pirates killed him. He's gone. Oh God, it's my fault. I should never have come here. I led them here thinking we could hide. He tried to help us, but he couldn't. And now he's gone. And it's all my fault. Shaking with horror and guilt, I look around into the dark night and try to figure out what to do. Behind us, the burning cottage, the pirates. To the right, the rocky cliffs leading to the sea. To the left, the unknown dark night. We move in that direction. Guilt consumes me as we stumble away. Why did I lead the pirates to that cottage? I should have run far away from here. The kind man is gone, and it's all because of me. The girl falls on the jagged rocks and shakes me from my regret. She's shivering and crying. I need to focus. I need to save her now. I help her up and we continue on. Thorny shrubs tear apart our already battered feet. The girl is exhausted and can't run much more. I pause, looking closely at her. Her blue eyes transport me to another space and time, and in this moment, I understand she's my sister. This beautiful, scared girl is my little sister. A deep sadness sets in, and I'm filled with despair. I grab her and hold her tight, trying to comfort her. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to save her. I take her little hand and move towards the cliffs. I can't drag her into the night across these rocks, these thorns tearing up her feet. Maybe moving along the beach is safer. As we get closer, I see a flickering light down on the sand. Unsure of what it is, I move in front of her and hunch low to the ground. The glowing light is dancing in the darkness. A small fire. In the soft glow of the flames, I see a figure. Looking closer, I see it's a man. We flatten to the ground and I think, who is he? Is he a pirate? He appears to be alone, perhaps making food on the fire. He's got shoulder-length brown hair and a short brown beard. I can't see his eyes to tell if they're kind. I'm torn. What if he's a bad guy? What if he can help us? Should we turn and run into the night? Where will we sleep? What will we eat? The winds are picking up and it's starting to rain. What if we can't find safe shelter? Maybe this man can take us somewhere safe. I realize I'm crying again. I have to pull myself together and figure out a plan. I inch closer to the cliff and peer down. My fingers and toes feel numb as I nervously assess the 50-foot drop down to the bottom. Craggy rocks jut out from the steep cliff. We may be able to scale them down to the beach and hope they don't crumble beneath our feet. I look at my sister and nod. She understands and nods back at me. We're going down. I step down backwards first. She follows. Slowly, carefully, we begin the descent. A few smaller rocks break off beneath my feet and tumble down the cliff. My heart feels like it's going to burst out of my chest. Trying to steady my shaking hands, I hold on to a rock jutting out and continue down. I reach up and guide her down above me. Finally, I feel the smooth sand beneath my feet. I look behind me at the stormy sea. The thunderous sound of waves crashing upon the shore heightens my anxiety. The whipping winds plaster my tangled hair to my face. I taste the salt water on my dry, cracked lips. I reach up and help my sister off the final ledge, and we move down the beach, hesitantly towards the man at the fire. He's still looking down, cooking a fish over the fire. There's no way for me to see his eyes yet. I still can't tell. We inch closer. My whole body is shaking from the cold, damp winds, from the increasing dread swelling up within me. Maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe we should just run. My stomach flips as the uneasiness takes over. I choke back a sob and squeeze my sister's hand, a tiny offering of comfort. The man at the fire finally looks up. He smiles. Not a kind smile. Not a comforting smile. A crooked, twisted sneer. A twinkle in his black eyes as if he just discovered a rewarding prize. A long, hooked nose hangs over a devious smirk. He's missing several teeth. The pit in my stomach grows. The deafening thumping of my heart beating in my ears. I instantly know we need to run away, and as I grab the girl, he begins to shout, "I found your treasure!" Jumping up from the fire, he shrieks again, "I found your treasure! I found your treasure!" And in a flash, I feel them behind us. I feel the weight of my mistake sneak up on me. I grab my sister and shield her behind me from the dozen or so pirates that suddenly appear. She's trembling, crying, My mind is racing. I'm trying to be strong. I have to save her. I don't know what to do. The big man at the head of the pack reaches behind me and snatches her quickly. The smell of alcohol seeps from his large body. I scream and kick him in the shins, trying to pull her back to me. My futile fight seems to amuse him. One of the others grabs her and pulls her further away from me. The big pirate jeers in my face. He reeks of booze. His long black hair is wet, pulled back into a low ponytail. His white shirt is soiled and untucked, his large gut slightly peeking out. He's wearing black pants tucked into tall black boots, a large knife in a sheath on his waist. He's got one gold, shiny tooth. Looking down the beach, I now see the 5 huge ships looming along the coastline, rocking in the choppy sea. I'm screaming for my sister, but the pack drags her away. I see her blonde hair whipping in the wind. I hear her desperate calls for me, for help. My heart shatters as I watch them drag her away. And then, just like that, she's gone. Trying to break free, I'm kicking and wailing, but it's no use. They're strong, forceful, aggressive. The gold tooth makes drunken threats, but I can't listen to him. My heart is broken. I did everything wrong. The kind man in the lighthouse, and now my sweet little sister. Both are gone because of me. It's too much to bear. The regret torments me. I'm exhausted, and my fight is futile. I give up, and they haul me off to a different ship. In the belly of the ship are cages, about 10 total. In each cage is a girl, all younger than me, all looking to me for help, all terrified of their fate. I have nothing left to give. The cage is about 5 feet high, 5 feet wide. Thick black iron rods and a sturdy chain keeping it locked. Several inches of water slosh around the floor. It's cold and dark. It reeks of alcohol. Tiny rays of light shine through the wooden floorboards above. Now I understand. We're captives, stolen from our families, ripped from our homes, forced to have sex with these monsters, locked in cages. And now my sister is gone. I couldn't save her. I try not to let myself think of what they might do to her. I have nothing left to give. Days pass. Nobody comes to get me. The other girls are whimpering, begging for food. It reeks of urine. I have nothing left to give. They come for the other girls, drag them out of their cages, their terrified cries echoing throughout the belly of the ship. I can't help them. I can't save them. The cage, a fate worse than death. More time passes. I open my eyes and I'm standing on a wooden plank. It's about 10 feet long, jutting off the side of the ship. Looking out, it's an endless ocean. Gray, stormy skies, rough waters. My footing is unsteady as the ship crashes into the waves. I see a large black anchor attached to a chain. The chain is wrapped around my ankle. I'm ready. The pack is drinking, singing songs of plunder and pillage, laughing at my fate. I'm ready. The gold tooth in my face, his hot breath slurring something I don't care to understand. I'm ready. And finally, he pushes me, a forceful shove, and I'm falling, off the wooden plank, off the ship. I have no fear. I'm ready. The cold water welcomes me. I'm sinking down fast, and as I fall, the chains break free. The crushing weight of guilt is lifted. The dark ocean becomes crystal clear. The waves begin to calm. And then I see him, right in front of me, waiting, just like he said he would. The dolphin. He swims beneath me and I slide on his back. I hold him tight and thank him. I'm safe. I'm at peace. I am free.
And we're back. Again, I'm Keysha. I'm the facilitator and guide during these sessions, and I'm joined by my co-host, Hilary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hilary. I'm the writer and the narrator of the story portion of this podcast, and I'm really excited to be here. Let's see. I think to start things off, Keish, maybe we should have you give a description to people about what QHHT is and I guess maybe how you got into it.
Yeah, sounds good. So QHHT is Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, and it was developed by the late Dolores Cannon. She passed away in 2014. And for those of you who don't know who she is, I highly recommend that you check her out. She's quite an amazing woman. She had been using this technique for, I think, almost 50 years to regress people into what we would call past lives. So in the beginning of her career, this was called past life regression. And then as time evolved and her practice evolved and her experience evolved, she changed that to quantum healing hypnosis technique for many reasons. So if you check her out, you'll get a better understanding of why she changed it to quantum healing hypnosis. And so what it is we flip the two brain hemispheres using very basic imagination techniques. And what I mean by that is the subconscious brain is the right brain, and the unconscious the conscious brain is the left brain. And we use basic imagination techniques to activate the right brain so that the conscious brain kind of just takes the back seat. And just for people who don't know this, the imagination and the subconscious, they reside in the same part of the brain. And so that's why we use these techniques, just activating the imagination. And as we move into the right brain, we go into the theta brainwave state, which is the same state just before sleep and just before we wake up in the morning. And Dolores would say that oftentimes in these sessions, we're actually in the somnambulistic state, which is just beyond the theta brainwave state. It's a little bit deeper than that. And so once we're in that state, we are speaking to the subconscious brain, and it is very much like being awake in a dream, which is why this first episode is titled Awake in a Dream. And I think that you can explain to people, Hilary, a little bit more when you explain to them what this is like for you, and give a better
absolutely.
Give a better understanding of what that actually means from your perspective while you're actually in this state.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, of course. Is there anything else you want to say about QHHT itself before we get into?
I think that I would like to tell people that I'm not real crazy about the word hypnosis.
Right.
Because like you had said also, it's not that the person is ever completely unaware of what's happening. And I think most people, when they think of the word hypnosis, they think that they're in some sort of state where they have no idea what's going on, and they can be told to do some really silly things or whatever. But that's not at all what this is like. There is a part of the conscious brain that is definitely still working, and the person is still aware to some degree of what's happening, truly as if you're having a dream and you're able to have a conversation and dialogue and talk to somebody while you're in the dream state. That is the best way to describe it, I would say. And I guess I should share a little bit about how I got into doing this work. And I've been meditating for a long time, and over a decade. And in my meditations, I've had a few glimpses into past life experiences. And the first time that had happened for me was about 10 years ago. And that was what first made me really curious about past lives. And that's when I started doing some research, and I came across Dolores Cannon and her work, which I've been a big fan of ever since. But it wasn't until 2 years ago where I had this week where I was truly feeling like I was being bombarded with all of this information coming through from what I call the other side. And it was in that week where it became very clear to me that this was happening because I was supposed to be doing something with this information. And so in meditation, I just asked the question, what am I supposed to be doing with this information that keeps coming through? And I tossed a few things around, like, am I supposed to be a channeler? Am I supposed to be an intuitive? Like, I didn't know. And one of the things I asked was, am I supposed to be helping people with past lives? I realized in that moment that if I were going to be helping people discover or uncover their own past lives with this type of work, that I would have to be willing and capable and able to experience some really horrible things. And what would the most horrible thing I could imagine? What would that be? And in my mind, I thought that would be my daughter being brutally murdered. And so I was trying to prepare myself and see if I could actually witness such a horrific thing. And while I was trying to imagine this, what happened instead was I saw this woman's arm, and it was from the elbow down, and she was spreading this piece of fabric over a couch. And I knew immediately that she was a middle-aged woman, and this was a European fabric, and she was totally fine. She was completely content. And I knew that this woman was my daughter. And I became so sad in that moment. It was like devastating to me, to be quite honest, that she was not attached to me in that lifetime. And it shocked me because I didn't really think that I had these really strong, not that I don't love my daughter, but I didn't realize the depths of my attachment to her in this current life. And so in that moment, I said to myself, oh my gosh, I really need to let go of my attachment to Avery. And as soon as I said that, I heard this voice say to me, you need to let go of everything that you think you know about everything. And that was my answer, that this was what I was supposed to be doing, because never, ever, ever had I heard the concept or even contemplated the idea that I could go into somebody else's body into a past life. And that's what it felt like to me. Like I was actually in my daughter's body, and I felt her contentment and I could feel her essence and her being. And that was quite incredible to me. And so to me, that was my answer. And I signed up to do this course that very day. I think it was like actually immediately. I don't think it was even an hour later.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think like the one thing that we have discovered the more we've continued to do this is we just keep going back to that same thing, like forget everything you think you know. Mm-hmm. Because we always have these ideas of what we think is going to happen. And it's like never the way we think it is. It's always totally different, but also way cooler than what we think.
Always.
So
always, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what the hell's going on, but I do know that this is super cool.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, and one of the things about one of the main reasons why this is one of the main reasons I'm really excited to share this journey that you and I have been going on for literally the past 2 years. So since the beginning of my work with this, is because I never heard. Like I said, I've been following Dolores's work for over a decade, and other people who do the same type of work, and I'm sure other people are doing similar things to this, but I've never heard of anybody else that's worked with a single individual for this period of time, and in this using this format or whatever you want to call it, this process like you and I are doing. So this is all brand new to me also. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's been a wild ride. Yeah, it really is.
It's been super fun.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think you should help people understand a little bit about who you are and what your life was like when we first started doing this work together.
Yeah, I would be happy to. Like Keysha said, we started this probably 2 years ago, I'd say. And this began at a time in my life where I was just a freaking hot mess. I mean, truly, like really going through it at the time. I'd say like outwardly, probably not as much as like other times in my life where it was really noticeable, right? That I was completely falling apart. But this was very much an internal battle that I was going through. And it started in 2020, but I guess I should just say like prior to all of this, prior to 2020, my life was, I'd say, very typical of most people, right? I was a business owner. I had run a business for about 10 years and it was very successful, and that was cool for a while. I enjoyed that. I was able to build something and have it be as successful as it was. But then it got to that point where many businesses do, where it completely took over my life. And I was at a place where I was just completely exhausted, worn out, and just really trying to get through each day. At that point in my life, and for most of my adult life, I was also really fixated on the outside, the external world. And so I grew up in a family that was pretty focused, and politics was always discussed at the dinner table, and I was encouraged to be well informed, right? So I think especially over the last 5+ years became hyper fixated on what was happening on like the world stage and within politics in our country, and just became really consumed by it. Almost to the point where it was like this weird addiction, right? With like following this like doom and gloom. And I literally was like convinced that the world was going to end, every day. It was just like feeding myself this constant stream of negativity. I mean, that's pretty much what you get when you turn on the news. So, and I just felt like that was what I was supposed to be doing. I never even really considered like, gee, if I just like don't focus on this for a while, the world might actually seem a little bit better. Yeah. So I also want to say that I had never considered myself a spiritual person throughout my life. When I was young, I was exposed to Catholicism by my mother. And I went to Catholic school for a few years, and I just really didn't like it. I was not cool with like authority figures, and I felt like there was a fair amount of control and perhaps judgment. And I'm not knocking anybody that like Catholicism works for. That's cool for you. For me, it just didn't didn't really feel like something that I was interested in. So I kind of pushed that away. And then I had a dad who was a behavioral scientist and also an atheist, and very vocal about his beliefs, let's just say. And so I think as for most of my life, I've had these like fairly rebellious streaks. And so to me, I think it was like leaning into that atheism, right? Like, I don't believe in God. I'm this like rebel. And so I kind of leaned into that. And then I took any form of spirituality really and like put it in this box with organized religions and just like locked it up and pushed it as far away from me as possible. And so I never really even considered that there was like, you know, that you could go on this spiritual journey that wasn't something that you would have to like go to church and, you know, confess your sins about. I don't know. It was never a part of my life. And so going into this, right, I'm going through now what I have learned is some people refer to the dark night of the soul. And I would say that that's pretty much where I was starting in 2020, which was, you know, a wild year in and of itself. And so then I start going through this massive transformation out of nowhere. Truly, this wasn't something I sought out. It was just like over a span of a couple months, I just started like realizing these things that I had believed in, these things that I had identified as for basically my entire adult life started to feel like bullshit, really. I mean, it just felt like these things that I believed in were all lies. These parts of my identity were just kind of crumbling away. For a long time, I associated my value and my worth as a person with my career. So it was really important for me to be successful with that. And then I got to a point that year where I was just like, I don't give a crap about this anymore. I'm done. And so it was really just this like death of all of these parts of me. And it was very confusing for me, let me just say. And I started looking in all these different places for answers and kind of spiraling out in my head a lot about what was going on. I have always been really close with my family, and we've all sort of shared these beliefs for, you know, my basically entire life. And so as I'm starting to question these things, I'm starting to talk to some of my family members about it. And they're kind of looking at me like I'm nuts. And also, I think I was doing it in such a way that was like, you know, almost bullying them or talking down to them if they weren't in agreement with what I was now thinking. So it was just like, I'm picking fights, and it was just kind of a shit show for me. So all this stuff is going on. And then there's this one day, I remember it was like late summer and it's super hot outside, and I'm getting ready to take my dog for a walk. And I was just like in a really sad, almost depressed state this day. The night before, I got into this big fight with my mom because once again, I was trying to convince her to believe the things that I believed, and she wasn't, and she was getting irritated at me for constantly calling her and trying to jam all this stuff down her throat. And so she basically was like, you need to stop doing this. Like, this isn't cool. And so, which is like a fair point, you know, it wasn't cool. It was just like a really lonely space for me to be in. And so I go to take my dog for a walk, and like most days when I would walk him, I would always have some sort of podcast on that was no doubt talking about the world being in shambles and like how everything is completely fucked. And so this day I decided to just like leave the headphones at home. I take my dog out and we're walking, and as I'm walking, it's like I feel like I'm dragging this ball and chain behind me, right? I'm carrying this heavy, heavy weight, and that I have been carrying for a while now. And something happened on this walk. And the only way that I can really explain it was like this shift in my perspective, right? So 1 minute, everything is really dense and dark and heavy. And the next minute, it just felt like that ball and chain was broken off and all this heaviness lifted. And there was like this huge weight like lifted from my shoulders. And suddenly it was like, oh, wait, so there actually is like beauty and magic and love in this world. And it's all around you if you look for it, if that's what you're seeking, right? But I'd spent the last like 10 years just looking for dog shit. So that's all I found. Just piles of dog shit everywhere. And so, it wasn't this like aha white light moment where everything, like all of my problems disappeared. Like it actually opened up new doors to new, confusing avenues for me. But there was this absolute shift in my perspective. And truly from that day on, I have not like sought out any of that negative stuff that I was feeding myself before. It was like, I deleted all of those things from my listening, whatever apps, my podcast apps, and like went through my social media accounts and completely, got rid of all of the people that I was following that were sort of feeding into this. And so that was a big step for me, for sure.
That is a huge step for you, I just have to say.
Because, you were on the receiving end of a lot of those.
It's a huge
doom and gloom.
Yeah. And it's funny because I catch myself sometimes now where I'll be like, Howie, did you hear about, and you're like, no, I don't pay attention to any of that stuff anymore. And I'm like, damn, she really doesn't. Yeah. No, I truly had to. And I just want to say, like, it doesn't mean that I don't give a shit about the state of the world. Of course, yeah.
And I don't care about people and humanity. But I also understand that me watching the news and being hyper fixated on that doesn't do shit. Mm-hmm. Right? All that does is like lower my vibration, bring me down into this like doom and gloom and literally just fixate on the negativity again. And I just can't do that anymore. So, but like then, so I wasn't seeking out those like negative, news podcasts or whatever. But then it was like, in that moment, it was like I almost knew that this was a spiritual awakening, even though like I never really contemplated that before. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I wasn't looking for a spiritual awakening. Obviously, this shit just happened. And so then I'm like still seeking external like validation or external information to tell me what is happening with me. Mm-hmm. It would not have occurred to me at the time to like, why don't you go home and like meditate and really do some like, deep reflection on who I am and my pattern. Like none of that shit occurred to me. It was like, no, now I got to find out what's a spiritual awakening. And for anybody that has like gone through this, like, there's so many rabbit holes you can go down with that too. So I definitely got a little tripped up here and there. However, I was very, very fortunate that all of this coincided with you beginning this practice as a QHHT facilitator. And so I knew that you were taking the courses, and I knew all the first few people that you had done the sessions with. And so I was excited to do one with you. I knew a little bit about Dolores Cannon and what it was, but I definitely went into it with that idea that I was going to be like hypnotized, right? And like, I'm not going to know what's going on. And so, yeah, it was really interesting and really cool when it did happen to know like, oh, I actually do know what's going on. It's not like I'm totally out of it. So it was really cool. And this is like, I don't even know where I would be if this hadn't happened at the same time that all of this went down for me, because this just like,
opened up all these new worlds for me that I never knew existed. And, you know, really got me focused on this path of truly, it's just been like self-discovery, like figuring out who the hell I am and why I'm here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's
pretty grateful for that.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing because it's the same is true for me on the other side of it too. It's like, you know, this is always a participatory thing. So it is like what I've learned from working with you for this extended period of time is way beyond anything I could have possibly ever imagined. And so it was really perfect timing for both of us. And I think it's a good, you know, it's important for everyone to know that it really doesn't matter where you are on your journey or whether you're a spiritual person or not. I think you're the perfect example. Like, I've been on this spiritual quest for most of my life, all of my adult life, really, and a serious meditator and into this kind of metaphysical stuff for truly since I was like 17, and it makes no difference from me and somebody like yourself who has had no interest in any of this until this point.
No idea what's going on.
No. Which makes it even more amazing, really, because I think it makes it more amazing. And I didn't do a very good job at explaining in the beginning what this process is like. So do you mind if I take a second here to explain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it is, the person brings me questions that they want answers to. So a few of Hilary's questions, I think you would agree, were based around this time in your life and like things that were coming up and answers that you wanted that were kind of triggered by these things that you were going through at that time. And so once we move the person into the subconscious brain, most people have what is called a past life experience, which is the story that you just listened to. And that doesn't happen every single time, but that is mostly what happens. And in that experience, the person their questions that they brought are usually answered from this different perspective and a different way of looking at things. So that darkness that you were kind of lingering in for a long time in the beginning was very representative, I feel like, of this place that you were in just before you decided to do this session with me. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. That darkness that I wrote about in the beginning of the story I think it showed up probably for a few reasons. Obviously I was going into an experience that was pretty scary. So I think that definitely had something to do with it. But I also believe that a big part of it was that I was going into this with some serious self-doubt. I don't know why I was so convinced that I needed to be some sort of enlightened person in order for this to work. But that's what I thought. Like deep down, I was just like, I had all these insecurities of like, I mean, God, I've been like an atheist my whole life. Like, how is this shit going to work for me? You know? And they're just like that little voice in the back of my head that was like, it's not going to work for you, you know? And which I didn't voice to anybody, but it was definitely there. And so that darkness was tough. I was there for a while. To me, I think it felt like hours, but it was at least a half an hour.
Which is a long time.
I wasn't seeing. Yeah. I mean, I guess that was like the longest you've ever had to deal with in all of your 160 sessions.
Yeah. It's so far you have the record, Hilary.
Yeah. I'm the winner.
The lingering in the darkness record.
Yeah. Always. Yeah. I was getting really frustrated with myself too. I mean, at one point I almost wanted to cry because I really wanted to do this. It's not like I didn't want to do it. I really wanted some kind of relief from the way that I was feeling. Mm-hmm. And I was really hopeful that it was going to help me. But there was all of this doubt that I had in myself. And so being in that dark space was to me, the manifestation of all of that doubt. Mm-hmm. And so when Keysha was talking about using the imagination and visualization techniques in the beginning of it, she had asked me to go to the most beautiful place. And this was one of the first things she asked me, before we tried to go into the life. And that was really easy for me to see and to describe. That was the Alpine Lake. Mm-hmm. And so I'm describing this scene, which I can see very vividly and all these details. And then from there, I think you tried to move me from there then into the life. And that's when I just got stuck in the darkness. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, right before I was about to say, okay, we need to stop, this isn't going to work for me, you said, okay, let's go back to that Alpine Lake, because you knew, at least I could see stuff there. I was right. in a space that I was describing. And then then when we went back into that space again, this time I was in the water, in the scene, instead of being an observer, which is what I was the first time we went there. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in the lake and it's beautiful. And I think maybe I just want to explain a little bit to people before we get too far into what, how this life was for me, is how the information shows up mm-hmm. in the sessions for me. I don't know if it's like this for everybody, but for me, it comes in 3 different ways. And the first are these very vivid, oftentimes visual scenes. So it is watching a movie in your mind, where I can see places or people, and I can describe everything about them, all these details. Another way is where I'll just have these really strong feelings about a person or a situation, and that might not come with these visuals. That might just be this strong feeling I have that this dude is an evil pirate, without really being able to see. And then the last way is just these rapid fire information downloads, where it's I just know all this stuff. Mm-hmm. All this information falls in my lap and I'm just rattling off all of this stuff that happened in the past or the future or now. And it's just I don't know. But with all 3 of them, there is this absolute sense of trust. Mm-hmm. And what I'm saying is truth. And even if it's oh yeah, here's this dolphin in an alpine lake. What? That's not,
that's not really real.
Right. Which I think, honestly, in this first one, I did have that moment of being wait, I got to be making this shit up, because dolphins don't hang out in alpine lakes. And then I was just dude, just go with it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, let's just talk about the dolphin here for a minute. The dolphin is the perfect example of how, in that moment, you're just telling me this is what's happening and this dolphin shows up. And so you're just telling me exactly what's happening in that moment. But for me, on the side that I'm on, I know that dolphins, as far as we know, aren't in alpine lakes. So this is a spirit guide. Obvious to me, that seems obviously this is a spirit guide that's showing up to help you, and the dolphin would be the absolute perfect spirit guide to show up, because oftentimes when we're drowning in emotions or having a lot of sorrow or grief or fear or any of this stuff, the dolphin is there to help remind us to come up for air. And also very much the dolphin connects us from the physical world or the physical realm to the spirit realm, and gives us a huge sense of protection and safety and self-love. So, I mean, that was amazing and beautiful for me to experience in that moment, because I knew at that moment that we were going to get somewhere.
Like finally.
Yeah.
I had to call in backup.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, none of that occurred to me in the moment. I was just more like, okay, I'm, now I have this dolphin, this friend here with me. And he definitely showed up at the right time, because I didn't say this before when I was talking about the darkness, but it happened the first time in the darkness, and then the second time when the dolphin was there, where I had these crazy panic attacks, where it was just like this feeling of absolute terror coming over me, and I didn't know where it came from, why it was showing up, but it's definitely like not a good vibe,
You were actually hyperventilating in real life. It was very intense, I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's like never happened to me before, so really interesting. But when it happened the second time in the lake, like having the dolphin there was definitely helpful. I definitely needed him there as well to kind of get me moving out of the lake, because I think I would have been content to just hang out there and call it a wrap, It's like, that was cool, Keysha. My past life, I was best friends with a dolphin, and we lived in the middle of nowhere and swam together.
Yeah, we just hung out in this lake, and that was pretty much it. Thank God he was pushy. If he wouldn't have been so pushy with you, that would have been end of story.
Exactly. He was super pushy. He was like, basically like, get your ass moving or I'm leaving.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, you said
he did.
You said he would wait for you to go, and he would be there for you when you came back. But if you didn't go, he was not going to be there for you. He was very clear about that.
Right. He was very clear about that. Yeah, he was very pushy. And that's what I needed, though, to finally move out of that lake. And this is like one part of the story. I don't think I need to run through the whole story because I just read it to everyone. But this part was really cool for me, for the first time to experience like coming into my body in these sessions. And so this whole time I'm in the lake with the dolphin, like I didn't have a body. It was just like whatever, just this energy floating around. I have no idea. And so as I'm finally kind of getting out of the water, I look down at one point, because you had kept asking me too, like, do you I think you were trying to prompt me, actually, like, can you pet the dolphin?
I was, for sure.
So, like, trying to see if I could see a hand, and I was like, I'm just going to kiss him on the nose.
Yeah,
and you're like, great.
Yeah.
Cool. And so I had no idea what kind of a body I was in until I started walking out of the lake. And then I look down, and I just see this, like, pale young hand, and it was pretty obvious that it was a hand of like a teenage girl. And then I look down and I see these feet that are all bruised up and battered, and then very quickly it was like, the rest of my body materialized, and I'm telling you like what I'm wearing and my hair. And so that all came like very quickly. As soon as that hand showed up, then it was like within not even a minute, I could tell you what the rest of my body was like. And that was really cool. And that's kind of like always, to me, like we've done 13 of these now. And that moment of like figuring out, who am I? Am I young? Am I old? Am I male? Am I female? That's kind of like one of the funnest parts of it, I think, is figuring out who the hell I am.
Yeah.
So that was my first time experiencing that, and it was really cool. And then, yeah, from there, shit just kind of went downhill for me. And it's like nonstop terror.
Welcome to the world of terror. And, you should probably explain here, because we're making a lot of light out of this. And it was obviously a terrifying experience that you had. And that terror was really real for you at the moment. But we can laugh about it now just because it does kind of sound ridiculous that somebody immediately would be like, yay, I want to do that again.
Yeah, sign me up. Yeah, well, I know, I often think about that when I tell people about this first one. They're like, what the hell? Why would you ever want to do that?
Right.
It sounds awful. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, this one was like the scariest out of any of them. First of all, I'll just say that, like, straight out of the gate, this one was just like the most terrifying. And I can say that, like, yes, it was this real raw terror that I felt, but I also felt like I was completely in control. And I could tell you I wanted to stop. And there was this sense of safety because I knew that you were there. And you're like the anchor to this reality. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like, when you have a really bad nightmare, like I try to think about this, like if this was a dream I was having, I would have like woken up, like, get me the hell out of here.
Right. Several times.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like having you as the guide and the anchor, and that like you are this protector that's there, that. And again, at any time I could say, I want out, but at this point I was pretty interested in like, what is going to go down? Like, why am I feeling this way? And then once I got into it and things started rapidly unfolding, then it was like, well, I just wanted to see it through. I never thought about stopping it once things started moving along at all.
I have to just say this because it's going to not leave my brain until I say this, because I'm just like kind of wondering how it's very funny to me in a way that you say this is the scariest one of all, because I just had like this whole flood of other experiences in the future ones where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so funny that because yes, it was absolutely terrifying, but man, you're gonna go through some pretty crazy shit quite a few times.
I mean, I do. I do. I definitely do. I think it was just because this one was the first one, that when I look back on it, I think that this one was
right, because you didn't
terrifying
because you didn't know what to expect going into it and all of that stuff. So okay,
right,
I get that, but the story itself is, I don't think, the most terrifying, but it's up there.
No, it's up. It's definitely up there, but there's also a lot of other just absolutely insane things that happen down the road. But I think it was because I wasn't sure of what was going on in this one. And let's in the beginning.
Yeah, let's explain exactly what we mean by that, with me being like the anchor and the guide a little bit, just so people have a clear understanding. Like in that moment where you are looking for something else and you see that cottage in the distance. There was a moment there where you were quite frozen, and before you saw the cottage, and when you realized these pirates were looking for you and they were after you. If you were in a dream, like you said, that would probably have been a moment where you would have woken up from the dream, because it would have been so scary. But because I gave you that suggestion to turn around and look and see if you can see anything else, and then you saw that cottage, like that's how these little suggestions work. It's not like it's just a suggestion to maybe turn around and look for something else, or whatever. Those are how the suggestions work, to keep you moving along. And that's why it's really cool. Like if you truly were awake in a dream, it's really amazing in that sense to have like a guide and somebody that you can talk to, because you do feel safer, and you do feel it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like I'm like this time traveler that's out there like, blasting through dimensions, finding all this information and reporting it back to you. You're like ground control.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's perfect. That is truly what it's like, for real. Yeah.
Like taking notes and recording and stuff.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I recently heard someone talking about out-of-body experiences, and I was thinking, and he was explaining how he doesn't like the word out-of-body experience because it's not like your entire soul leaves your body and your body's like dead lying there or whatever. And that, but how he was explaining it was very, very much like this. It's very, very similar to astral projection, out-of-body experiences, all of that stuff. It's very, very similar, or if not the same. And yet you and I are able to have an actual conversation while you're going there doing it. It's wild.
It is wild. And it's like, there's one day that you and I did 2 sessions in a day, which we had to do for like timing purposes. And so we did almost back-to-back sessions. And at the end of it that night, I was like exhausted. I mean, physically, mentally, my body was just drained. And it was like, yeah, I mean, I spent like,
yeah, you were from India to Africa.
6 hours.
You're like blasted to the moon and back again, and like
yeah.
No, I mean
6 hours of going through space and time, and I mean it was like I don't normally feel like that after just one, but I think there was something about doing 2 of them that I could feel it in my body, like.
That was
I need to go to bed.
That was not. That was
tired.
And they were both super intense. Not that all of them aren't, but yeah, I remember those were. There was a lot in there, and they were for sure at least 3 hours long each that day.
Each, yeah, and that's something that's like really, really cool. Which, as you continue to listen to these stories, you'll get to like hear how much they evolve and grow, and it's like. This first story is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, you know? And then if you compare that to like even number 7 or 8, I think it's number 7 is like bonkers. Like trying to write that one, I was like, wait, I don't even know what's going on here. And so it's so cool. It's like the detail that comes in the later ones is like astounding to me, where I can just describe all of these little details in a room. So much more than I could in this first one. So that evolution of how these grow is also, I think, really cool.
Well, I think it was like number 7 or something where it was like, I feel like it was before that. Like there was, I know in the beginning, like the first, I don't know, like number 3 or something, it was like, oh my gosh, Hilary, you have to write these into stories. We both were like, this is amazing. This is truly incredible. And then it was probably around like 6 or 7 or something where we were both like, no, this is actually a message coming in from somewhere this is information coming in through you and bringing it here to share with the world, really. And it was more than just a QHHT hypnotherapy session to like heal these things about yourself. This was obviously a bigger message that you are supposed to share with the world, and that we are supposed to share this experience. And that became very clear, like
right. Yeah, it definitely did.
We're getting a little sidetracked. I feel like we should.
Right.
I feel like we should explain a little bit about why is this the first experience that you had, and
right. And so again, I feel like this had to show up as this like pretty simple story for me to be able to relate it. Like I could directly relate this to my life at the time that we did this session. It was so obvious to me. So the main things that I was able to recognize like almost instantly after coming out of this was like, okay, first of all, I've been walking around with this massive savior complex for most of my life that I truly had no awareness of. And was like, I almost just viewed myself not as like a saint or anything, but I almost like prided myself on being the one that was like always ready to swoop in and save somebody, even if they didn't ask me or want my saving, right? And so, I mean, even as a kid, as a young kid, I was like always rooting for the underdog and always like doing anything I could to help anybody that looked like they were down, you know, in school, whatever. And I carried that through into my adult life, and it just started to kind of like get a little bit out of control, I would say, where it was like running around trying to save anybody that I was close with. And despite them not asking me to save them. And here I am, this person that's like pretty empty, pretty, you know, me, myself, just kind of going through my own shit. And I don't know like who I am or what, you know, what I'm doing here, but I'm running around trying to help everybody and I'm here falling apart. Like that doesn't work. And, it really did not work for me.
Right.
I tried for a very long time and it never worked. And so I took that on like a personal level, but then it also kind of expanded to the level where that, I think that's also a part of why I became so obsessed with like, you know, politics in the world and all of that stuff, because not that I thought like I alone was going to save the world or anything, but it was like I had to at least know what was going on and all of the atrocities that were happening across the world so that I could just, you know, harp on everybody around me about it. And I don't even know. I don't know what I was thinking, but I know that that's the way I operated. And I also had some pretty severe attachment issues with several people in my life, but the most extreme was with my younger sister. It's a sister that showed up in this pirate life as that little girl. And I have always been like the, you know, protective older sister. And I took that role very seriously. And anytime my sister was going through her own struggles in her life, I would carry them as if they were my own and truly get myself into these places where I couldn't be happy and I couldn't be at peace unless I was like actively trying to fix someone, you know, or unless I knew that they were happy and they were good. And it's like, sure, I'm supposed to be, you know, her sister and be here for her and love her and, you know, be her friend and all of those things that we're supposed to do for the people that we love. But I'm not here to fix anybody or save anybody. And it was like the way that I was operating was just basically driving myself into these deep depressions and affecting many areas of my life. Like it wasn't cool. And so this showed up, I think, to show me like, you need to let these attachments go and let's work on some boundaries maybe and give up this savior complex and figure out what's going on with me before I start trying to save other people. I just think it's hilarious because it's like I look back on myself at that time and I was like empty and I'm here trying to like fill everyone else's cups up and I'm just like totally empty.
Yeah, and you look at this, like how that unfolded for you in this session where it's like, okay, so out of absolute fear for your life and your sister's life, you run to this house and in hopes for some help, and you don't even meet the guy that lives there, the lighthouse worker. You don't even see him, but yet they kill him and you believe it's your fault when all you were doing is trying to find some help somewhere. And even though his spirit comes and tells you it's not your fault, you don't believe that. And so it's like, okay, well, you're wanting to believe it wasn't your fault, but you can't let go of believing it's all your fault. And so then it's like, okay, well, if you didn't figure it out with the lighthouse worker and that old dude or whatever, you're going to have to sacrifice your sister in order to figure it out. We're going to take your sister. And so then like, there's nothing that you can possibly do. Like, it's not like there was nothing you could do. And so they take your sister.
I could have sat down and negotiated with you, Keysha.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And so then that doesn't work. And so they're like, okay, well, then we'll just put you in the cage on the ship and torture every girl on here all around you. And you have to sit and listen and actually be living in a cage. And that was the moment where you just kind of surrendered and
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And realized,
as I wrote in the story, it was like a fate worse than death.
Absolutely. You know,
yes. Being in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's what I needed, apparently, in order to, get the message through. So.
Yeah. And the cool thing is that all happened in like 2.5 hours rather than an entire lifetime.
Right. Exactly. So that's what I mean. That's so cool about this, though. It's like, in every single one of these, it's these like monumental lessons and messages that I get. That's like, I could be in therapy for decades paying for this shit.
Yes.
And it's like, all I got to do is go, travel to across the world and hang out with some pirates and get murdered a few times. And I learned these lessons. It's cool.
I think because that death scene in this one, I would like to explain to people that it is a normal part of the, I think you said that, it is a normal part of the, maybe not, a part of the QHHT process is the person goes into the past life and then we take them to their death scene. And like we said, you were only number 5 or 6 into it in the beginning of me doing this, but this was the first time where I didn't say to you in your death scene, you can step outside of your body and view this as an observer, because usually it's really intense for people. So I suggest that they step outside of their body and just view it as an observer. But this was the most peaceful moment for you in this whole entire thing. It was like all this terror and this super intense, absolute horror and terror the entire time until this moment, which was truly fascinating to me. That was the most peaceful moment. You were completely fine with being pushed over that plane.
I was ready to get off that boat. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was a point prior to doing the session that I had a little bit of uneasiness about, because I was thinking like, oh, you're going to like watch yourself die, or like, do I feel it? How does that work? And then when we got there, I was like, yep, let's do this.
Yeah, seriously.
Get me off this plane.
Seriously. And explain that a little bit more. I mean, I know you did explain it in the story, but what was that? Yeah, I mean, clearly it was like a pretty traumatic
life that unfolded. Mm-hmm. And then, a lot of times during these sessions and during the stories, you'll hear me say things like time passes or time condenses. And that's because Keysha's moving me forward in the story, in the session. And so after I was in the belly of the pirate ship and I'm describing what's happening in there to her, to the extent of like, okay, that's all that's really happening here right now. She said, okay, let's move forward to the next important thing that happens. Or even sometimes she'll say, let's move forward to the day you die. Mm-hmm. And so she moved me forward, I think, to the day that I die. I believe that's what you said in this one. And the first thing I see is I look down and I see my feet standing on this wooden plank. And then I see the anchor attached to the chain around my ankle. So it was pretty obvious what was about to happen. And there was like absolutely no fear in me at that point. And, all that fear that I carried through the entire session was just like, yep, gone. And I just felt this sense of peace. And then as soon as they pushed me off of it and I was in the water, it was like instant freedom, literally like instant freedom, not just from that life, but from that ball and chain that I had been carrying with these things that I just talked about, like the attachments and all of that stuff. It literally just felt like the weight was lifted, and then right after the chains fall off, then I see my buddy, the dolphin, there waiting for me as promised. Mm-hmm. And I think that was also a point for me that really solidified my trust in this entire process, because he's the one that essentially forced me to get out of that lake and move on my way. And he made a promise to me that he would be waiting for me. And he was. In the end, they're waiting for me. And so I think that helped me coming out of this, just feel like this whole thing, like I had a lot of trust in the whole process, despite it being scary. And I knew right away, as soon as we came out of it, first of all, we were both just like, holy shit, what?
Yeah.
Hell? And, but I knew right away I wanted to do another one. I remember like us talking pretty quickly after that about, okay, let's figure out when we can do it again. And I think another thing, a big thing that I gained pretty quickly after doing this session was that I knew I could go back and revisit these places like the lighthouse or the alpine lake anytime I wanted to when I was meditating. And that's not something that I did prior to doing this session. I wasn't an experienced meditator, and I certainly wasn't the kind of having these kinds of like visual meditations. But as soon as I was out of this session and I began meditating, it was like, boom, I could be at that lighthouse, and then I would be like, again, just like going all over the place and seeing all kinds of weird things. But
yeah.
But I did keep getting this one message over and over and over again in meditation, and then it was coming through songs, and just kind of everywhere I kept seeing this same message show up. And finally I tell you what the message was, and it was, remember where you came from. And then you had a pretty great idea.
Yeah.
Which was?
Yeah, I asked if you wanted to see if we could go to your first life on planet Earth and see what you had to experience that landed you in the belly of this pirate ship. Because I didn't, obviously, there was a part of me that thought at this time, like, well, maybe this was her first life on planet Earth. And then I thought, okay, well, fine. If it is, then that's where you'll end up again. But just out of curiosity, see if what landed you there? How did you end up there? And let's see if we can go to your first life on planet Earth. And that's what we decided to do. And
that was the start of this whole experiment that we embarked upon, which we had absolutely no idea where it was going to take us.
Right. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. But before we wrap this up, I just want to add two little things. I want to, because I think people will understand this as they listen and they move on. Like, you and I have oftentimes very different things that we take from these sessions, things we get out of them, and the things that also our interests and our curiosities and things like that are pretty different for the most part, I would say. And that's what I think is so beautiful about us doing this work together. Like, I'm very, very, very interested in like the psychology behind it and the symbolism and all of these kinds of components. And so like the male and female roles that you bring on, it's super fascinating to me when you come in as a male or a female, and what you experience in those different roles. And so in this one, I found it very interesting that from the very beginning you referred to the dolphin as a he and as a male energy. So even though these men that are after you and they're causing all this fear and harm and all of this awful stuff, is very much these men that are doing these things to you, the very thing that is also there to save you is also a male energy, which I think is quite amazing. And also that message that the lighthouse worker gave you, because when we move out of the past life experience, we then ask the person, we say, okay, that person can stay there, and then we ask to speak to the subconscious of you in this current life. That's the standard way of moving through these. And so in your subconscious, after the past life experience, I asked you if anybody felt familiar to you. And of course, your sister was your sister in this current life. And then the lighthouse worker was your grandfather. And he came and showed up to give you a very specific message. And I thought maybe you should share that before we...
Yeah, how could I forget about the lighthouse worker? Oh my God. So, yeah, in the moment of seeing the lighthouse worker in the session, there was a definite familiarity when I could see his eyes, but I didn't place it in the moment. There was just like too much panic happening. But in the end, when you were asking me, I immediately said, oh, it's my grandfather, my mom's dad, who passed away like over 20 years ago. And he came with a very specific message. And it was, you have to be the light. You have to show your mom the light. And I definitely misinterpreted that message for a little while there, and proceeded to try to tell my mom she absolutely needed to do QHHT. It's amazing. It's incredible. You're going to love it. And she just wasn't interested at the time, and that's fine. So the message was definitely not for me to shove my ideas down anyone's throat as I was used to doing. But I don't think I really understood the message until a while later, until I started noticing people that like either hadn't seen me for a while or it didn't even matter. Like I remember my sister saying this to me one time too, like, wow, you seem so much like happier. You seem so much more at peace and like chilled out, not on edge all the time. And people actually wanted to be in my presence, and they wanted to know, like, what are you doing? That's helping you so much. And I mean, I think no matter who we all can kind of agree, like things in the world have gotten a little bit nuts, and even I know that, and I don't pay attention to much anymore, but I do have an awareness of that. And so staying like having this inner peace right now is like the biggest gift for me. But that message from my grandfather, I believe, was basically for me to work on healing myself, work on figuring out, who I am and why I'm here, and letting this inner light inside of me grow. Because when I started this process, it was just this tiny little flicker that had been, almost burned out by all this negativity that I had been consuming for so long. And the more I continue to get my own shit together and become a happy person, that spreads to other people. It's a ripple effect. And it's pretty simple. It's like heal yourself and heal the world. And that's also a big part, for me anyways, of like why I feel it's so important for us to share this, is because this isn't just like the story of my soul's evolution. This is truly an adventure, right? Across space and time and all over this world and into other worlds that like, I don't even know where they came from. And there's like love and loss and revenge and murder. And I mean, it's just like one of the coolest stories I have ever read, and I wrote it, but it's like the information didn't come from me. Like I can't take credit for it. I don't even know where it came from. But
well, we're about to find out.
Right. But like, I think you have told me that you have seen pieces of yourself in these characters
100%
that are in these stories. And I believe that everybody that listens will find pieces of themselves or be able to relate to a specific lesson or a message. And even if anything else, like it's just really cool. But I also feel like this has come through in a way that has become very clear to me that this is something that we're supposed to share. Even if it's just like a cool story that people want to listen to, or if it's something that helps people in any way, shape, or form, like that's incredible to me. And yeah.
Yeah. And if anybody has any questions or comments on whatever platform or whatever that you're listening to, if you would leave those in the comments, we would appreciate that. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for...
And we do have like an Instagram. It's Wandering Star Pod. It's the same on Twitter. And we don't currently have a Facebook, but maybe we should get that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're really, really glad to have all you here listening to us. And we really hope that you'll come back next week when we go to my first life on planet Earth.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
See ya.